Welcome to Books Boys, live from the Grand Library, the Dean and PJ.
He's PJ.
Hello there.
I'm the Dean, and we are the Books Boys.
We're incredibly sexy book boys today. Oh, who's
Very
this?
sexy sounding PJ.
No, that wasn't me. That was. Hello there. I'm here to sponsor the Books Boys. My name is Jeremy, and I listen to these lads every day, and I think they're absolutely scrumptiously fantastic. Thank you, guys. And please listen to them. All right. Well, thanks very much, Jeremy. Jesus, he just came in the door, Dean, and I kind of like a bit worried here. I don't know who this guy is.
Listeners, this is the kind of life that PJ's leading. Just random people turning up in his house with a sexy voice.
It's very nice. He's a fan, but like he is in my house, and it's a bit, guys. A bit of privacy. Yeah,
that's worrying. That's worrying.
That's worrying. Well, anyway,
Dean. It's nice to meet Jeremy, and this is the Books Boys show. Get it? Buy it? Books.
The one and only. Still don't know exactly what they are, Dean. I mean, I go to a shop and I see toilet rolls, and I'm just wondering, is that the complete works of Shakespeare right there in front of me, or is that Sophocles? I get a bit confused in the old shop.
Yeah, I think you can get Sophocles now. It's nice and soft and cushioned and good for the body.
And fragrance. They've got vanilla fragrance and jasmine. So you can...
Jasmine Sophocles.
Jasmine Sophocles. Oh Jesus.
Get it here first. Well, PJ, shall we get stuck in? Shall I go first with some of the books I've read?
Go ahead, please. So what have you been reading? I generally don't know, actually, guys, this time. Usually I have a bit of knowledge.
Yeah, I think I didn't tell you this time.
Yeah, I didn't tell me this time, so I'm completely unprepared.
There will be some surprises. The first one's not a surprise, but there will be some surprises.
So
the first one is I read Emma, the final Jane Austen.
Ah, yes.
And I can only say one thing. Thank goodness that Jane Austen is over. I did not like Jane Austen. I'm sorry. I liked Northanger Abbey, but that was pretty much it. I mean, I've never seen a more overrated author or authoress in my entire life.
Controversial, Dean. Controversial.
I know it's controversial. Like I know it's a controversial opinion, but these are demo books. You know when you're making music and you do a demo, but it's not really finished and nothing really happens in it, and it's a bit flat, and then that's it. That's what Jane Austen is. It needs some production. It needs something in it.
Jason, if you were her editor back in the early 19th century, you'd be tough on her. Yeah, sure. Her books might not have been published. They might not have been published with you as the editor.
Well, she had a prince for a patron, so I guess that gets you published, even though you're writing. To be fair to her, she came before most of the Victorian stuff, and she laid the groundwork. They just took it a bit further, so she's early enough that she gets away with it.
So that's an important point. So, as a literary historian, you do recommend that you read her, right? That's a kind of.
I think it's important. We wouldn't have had the Brontes or Dickens or any of that stuff probably without Jane Austen.
Yeah.
So it's an important link between the Romantic period of poetry and everything and this Victorian novel period. I just don't think that on their own they're really good works.
So tell us about Emma.
So we've got this girl Emma, and she Emma Woodhouse, and she lives with her father, Mr. Woodhouse, and Miss Taylor's her companion. And Miss Taylor goes off and gets married, and they regret this. And the father, Mr. Woodhouse, he likes to, they're living in these little villages, and they only know maybe 20 people, and they have very limited world experience. And the father assumes that everyone shares the same opinion as him. So if he thinks that eating something is bad for eating cake is bad for your tummy, then he'll tell everyone, but we don't like cake, it's bad for our tummy. And they'll say, no, we quite want the cake, we like the cake. No, it's bad for you. It will not agree with you. They said, no, it's you that it doesn't agree with. And he'll say, no, it doesn't agree with anyone, because he assumes that everyone shares his experience. So even when there's a wedding, he's trying to tell them not to have a wedding cake, and he's persuading them to the last minute, don't eat that slice. It's going to be bad for you. He just doesn't understand that anyone could have a different opinion than him. And everyone mollycoddles him, and he claims to be an invalid, but no health condition is ever cited. He leaves his house once in the entire novel. And, it's kind of hinted that maybe he could be going a bit more, and there's not really anything wrong with him, but they all pander to him and respect him, and he's a nice character, though. I wouldn't really say anything bad about him. But the main character, Emma, she's a bit immature, but she thinks she's a matchmaker, and she's got this friend Harriet, and she wants to set Harriet up with someone. Harriet already has a suitor, a certain Mr. Martin, and Eliot says, well, you're above him, so don't marry him. Now, Harriet's not above him. Harriet's an orphan. She's a nobody. They don't even know who her family is. And it turns out they do get in touch with their family near the end, but Harriet's a nobody. But, Emma's just decided that she's somebody. And then she gives Harriet all these ideas above her station. Harriet's trying to get with Mr. Knightley, and that's a disaster because he's way above her station. And she kind of ruins Harriet's life a little bit, even though they're meant to be friends. And, these are soft books, so it all comes good in the end. But I'm not that keen on Emma, to be honest.
But you're not very keen on any of the protagonists, are you? From Jane Austen's books.
I mean, not really. No, not really. I think that they're, apart from Northanger Abbey, again,
Yeah, but you're always kind of complaining about the protagonist. The protagonist this, protagonist that. All right, so Jane Austen does not do good protagonists, except Northanger Abbey, which is considered the least popular of her works.
It's
very controversial.
Why? It's the only good one. It's the only good one.
Very controversial opinion, indeed. But okay, so go on.
Okay, so that's more or less the entire plot. There's nothing else that really happened. The problem with these books is nothing happens in any of them. There's just a lot of intricate conversations about the love story. The only other thing that happens is Miss Taylor goes off and gets married, and her new husband's son from a previous marriage arrives. And he does a bit of wooing, and everyone thinks he's going to be in love with Emma, and then he turns out to be a bit of a rake. And that's supposed to be a big swerve, but I think you see it coming 100 pages before the twist. So I don't think it's fooling anyone.
Okay, so not much of a. Yeah, it's not much. So basically, there's no kind of surprises. What kind of? You just kind of know what's going to happen the whole time.
Yeah, I mean that is meant to be a surprise, but I don't see it as a surprise. Okay. I mean, in the end, I guess this is technically a spoiler, but you think there's some kind of romantic connection between Emma and Mr. Knightley herself. But it's so clear from the first few pages, and in the end, you wonder if they're going to get together. But I don't think that's a swerve. I think that's been very clear from the beginning.
Okay. All right. So
that's more or less it. I mean, there's not a lot to say. The chap's called Frank Churchill, and it turns out he's actually in love with a friend of Emma's. These aren't good characters. He's nice because he's a bit of a rake, and I kind of like that about him. But other than that, there's not really a lot of likable characters. I like the dad because he moans a lot, but in a positive way, And there's a time when they want to put on a ball. They say, let's put on a ball, and they go to this guy. This guy says, well, you can have my house. There's 2 large rooms, and they say, well, we need to put the 2 rooms together. And the dad says, oh, it's impossible because when you go from one room to the other, there'll be a draft. And you're so delicate, you couldn't possibly go out in this draft, And then they have to go to all these hassle of covering up the gaps between the doors, and he just assumes that everyone's so incredibly delicate.
The interesting thing is about Emma, I haven't read it, but I do believe that Austen said that she's going to, before she started writing the novel, that she was going to write about a heroine who no one but herself would like. So she was going to take someone that no one likes except herself. Like she consciously made that decision, was Emma. Okay,
I would believe it because I didn't like her. Now you'll like this, PJ. At one point, some of the characters go off to Bath for their holiday. Every single novel they go to Bath. I love not that. A lot of creativity here.
I mean, I love that in the Pickwick Papers as well. That's where I first encountered it. It seems to be a very sort of I don't know, like the ultimate sort of luxury thing for
the ultimate pleasure spot.
Well, I have to go there. I have to go there and have a bath. How about that?
That's it. There's a lot of female delicacy in this, which almost to a point of, it's hilarious. The girl has to go to the post office to get some letters at one point. And, my dear Jane, what is this I hear? Going to the post office in the rain? This must not be, I assure you. You sad girl, how could you do such a thing? But the problem is there's pages and pages of, anytime something happens, At one point, someone gets a piano as a gift, and I swear there's about 30 pages of discussion. Who could have sent the piano? I wonder if it was Colonel so-and-so. And it just goes on and on and on, Nothing happens in the book.
There's 30 pages of someone who bought the piano.
And we never find out, really. I think,
we
we guess near the end, but it's never made clear.
So what is it about the Austen books that people love? I mean, guys, please write and feel free to share why you love Emma.
Please do. Booksboys@hotmail.com. Please tell us, or connect with us on Instagram. I did a ranking of the books on Instagram. It was hard because I was tempted to put Northanger Abbey at the first, and then everything else joined last. But I didn't do that. I did manage to do a bit of a ranking, but I don't know why people like these. I understand their historical importance, but people go on about them as if they're amazing, and they are not.
Oh god, I can just imagine you just Northanger Abbey and just everything else is just last. Okay.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, Persuasion was my least favorite, but the rest are all joint second last, I think. Look, I'm really, really, really happy to be done with Jane Austen. I'll never read them again.
TheDean, I mean, don't you want to start now with her letters and whatever, that kind of stuff.
I need her grocery list, and I need everything.
Oh, right, awesome, yeah.
Every possible thing that she read, yes.
So what did you read? What did you read after that?
It wasn't a good month.
I also have to mention that yes, I just researched this because I thought I read this. That do you know that Emma supposedly the book influenced the Harry Potter series?
Really?
Yeah,
in
because
what way?
Well, I know that J.K. Rowling she loves Jane Austen, but specifically she always mentioned Emma. So I was just wondering, do you see any kind of connection, or what's the connection?
Me, no, that really shocks me. I haven't a clue. I can't. I have no idea.
It literally says, I'm just reading, I've never set up a surprise ending in a Harry Potter book, J.K. Rowling says, without knowing I can never and will never do it anywhere near as well as Austen did in Emma.
No, she's not read the book then, because it's impossible.
It's a twist ending. So what?
There's no twist ending. It's so obvious.
Come on, something about the piano. A vampire jumped out of the piano. Something happened. You must have missed the page. There must be some huge twist ending.
The small twist that you see coming 200 pages before it happens, I don't know. And we never really do give the end spoilers away here, so I don't want to say what happens, but I think anyone listening can guess. It's a Jane Austen. They all fall in love. I mean, I don't know what else to say, Emma's not very nice to Harriet. She could be a lot better, and she's quite snobbish. That makes her more dislikable than ever. She gets various different suitors for Harriet and doesn't think of any for herself until it just happens. But no, there's not really a twist. No, that's sorry, she's wrong.
Anyway, that's J.K. Rowling. So there you go. So if you're listening,
I thought to myself, look, after reading a bad book, what do I need? Something fun, something lighthearted. So I went to Virgil, the Aeneid. Now, do you know this one?
Is it supposed to be? Yes, but and to be honest, I'm a bit ignorant on it. Is it supposed to be a Roman, basically written in the Roman times? But it's supposed to be kind of a sequel to the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Again, I find this so tedious to get through. This was not a good month, and normally I'm very positive. It's going to pick up after this, but it didn't start well. I did a bonus episode on the Odyssey. I think the Odyssey is a brilliant book. I would admit that the Iliad is very dull. This book doesn't need to exist. That's its main flaw. Okay. So it's written a good bit in the future. It's not a Greek book, but it's about Greek things. It's by, Virgil. So he's a Roman poet, Latin literature. It's considered one of the greatest pieces of Latin literature. I don't know who by or who read it, but we start
this show. Why don't we just call this show TheDean, the book critic versus the world of book critics? That's it. Like,
Look, if this is someone's first episode, I feel sorry because normally we're very positive, but these two books didn't get me off to a good
yeah.
start.
Then I mean, I think I've got the Virgil upstairs. It's a bit dusty, but I think I might just have to put him. I don't know, give him to Oxfam or something. I don't know. You're not selling it.
Well,
I was
I'll
going
tell
to
you
read that book.
briefly. The first half of the book, we recap the events from the Odyssey. So if you've ever read the Odyssey and thought it was good, how would you like it to be told more briefly and less wow? That's what we get here. So we recap on the sack of Troy, but this time it's more from the Trojans' perspectives. It's not really from the Greeks. So the Greeks are sort of the bad guys here. And also they put all the Greek gods in the Roman, version of their name, which I find really off. I couldn't remember who was who. I need a chart. But we do the sack of Troy. Then we go to the underworld. We have the Cyclops. We have Scylla and Charybdis, the sea monsters. But it's all the same stuff. It's just a retelling, of the Odyssey. And that's the first half. Then the second half almost turns into the Iliad. It's just extended fight scenes. It's very dull. There is a girl, Dido. She's a kind of Trojan, queen or whatever. And she has a bit of a love story with Aeneid, who's the.
So I guess a bit steamy of a sudden, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I don't find Aeneas to be a great hero. They try to say that he's essentially, finding Rome. We talk about Romulus and Remus who did find Rome, but the idea is that he discovers, in this kind of Greek tale, Aeneas discovers the site of the future Rome. Basically, that's kind of what they're trying to say.
So it's like the foundation of Rome is seen here in this book.
Yeah, that's what this book is trying. They're trying to set him up as a great hero of Rome. But honestly, just go read the Odyssey. This is I don't think this is doing anything for anyone. I don't know who likes this. I don't have a lot more to say about it. I really struggled to even focus on it. I find it very, very dull.
Oh wow, okay. And you've got a high tolerance for adult books. Let's be honest. Very high tolerance.
How high my tolerance is. The last couple of days, I've just read half of this book of Trials from Classical Athens. So I recommended this before. I'm reading actual court speeches. And if you go to patreon.com/booksboys, there's already 12 mini episodes recorded where I review each court speech. So, I can read this dry stuff and I can, but this was just boring,
Oh no. Okay, so Emma and all right. Okay, fair enough. So Jane Austen and I was going to say, don't know why I was going to say John Dryden. No, he translated. So basically, Jane Austen and Virgil, they can, they have to go to some writing working classes. They have to maybe revise their scripts. So that's what you're saying. Controversial.
Yeah, I think
opinion.
So. And Virgil, of course, most famous for accompanying Dante as his poet guide in the Inferno.
That's right, yeah.
And that reminds me, this month's episode is sponsored by Virgil's Tours of Hell.gov. So if you'd like a tour of hell, get onto our good friend Virgil, and when he's not busy writing trash that rips off the Odyssey, he'll give you a tour. So that's our sponsor, Virgil's Tours of Hell.gov.
A tour through the underworld. Spooky.
PJ, before I move on to the good books I read, why don't you give us something?
Well, guys,
give me a break from ranting.
I haven't been doing too much reading this month. I have to admit, but I have continued on my Odyssey. Do you get it, Dean?
I get it.
Pippi's adventures in I was going to say in Wonderworld. Jeez, I'm mixing up all the stories. Not Pippi's adventures in Wonderworld. Don't know where that came from. This book is called Pippi Goes on Board. And it's the second book of the Pippi series. There are 3 of them officially, but there are a lot more unofficially, some picture books as well, some other authors. And this just continues the story of Pippi. The first book starts off with her being introduced and random episodes happening. Not really much. Now, I love Astrid Lindgren, really. I love her writing style. I love the way she... I love that she's created these characters. She's an awesome character describer. But I don't think she is the best plot necessarily deviser. She doesn't really... The first book doesn't have much of a plot. And the second one does a bit more, but it still sometimes feels episodic. So the second one is about Pippi goes on board. She goes with her father. traveling on sea. So the father is not in the first book, but he's mentioned as this king who's somewhere, they somewhere got lost, but she knows he's not dead. He can't be dead. He's amazing. He's a king. She just kind of knows that he's the king of some tribal islands in the Pacific. And just a little warning, guys. This book has obviously been written in the 40s, because let's just say that there's some kind of very kind of racial kind of stereotypes and
right.
terminology. So I mean, like I just formulated very nicely there, but the actual descriptions are very kind of no, this is nuts. I can't even show this on the radio. It's very controversial, but it's a great story, guys. She goes on board with her friends and the dad as well. And the dad is this character who's just kind of very, he's kind of very bubbly, he's kind of huge, fat. And he's a captain of the ship, but he's also the king of this tribal island. And just like is in the first book, the story is more like I would say like a guide for children, or for let's just say a guide for children and a guide for everyone's inner child on how to act and how to behave in a nonconformist way. It's been a very controversial book, by the way. The whole series, it's been very controversial in Sweden, at least, when it came out.
Right.
Yeah, because
this surprises me, because I always remembered it just as like a kid's cartoon thing about a stripy socked girl. I never knew that it was so deep or so controversial.
Well, yes, it was very controversial because, it just came out in the 40s in Sweden. And, Pippi is a very sort of, she just breaks every single rule there is in society, just everything. And it's being championed. So it's really Astrid championing this girl. Plus, Astrid Lindgren, she had kind of a tough kind of life. She had to kind of put her son in adoption for a few years. She was not well off. And I see this pattern a lot, I find, with children authors, the best ones especially, who are women especially, they have a very tough childhood and upbringing. Just like J.K. Rowling we just mentioned. So it's the same here, and I can just see that Astrid is kind of like saying F you to society, and this is the antidote to everything that's wrong with society, Pippi. And I think it's great because you don't necessarily have to do everything she does, but it just says kind of you can do. You don't actually have to do anything society tells you to. If there's a cake on the table, you don't actually have to ask someone, "Can I have it?" You just kind of eat it off for yourself, and then just throw it around and have monkeys wearing suits and horses, with spots, and it's all over the place. Really, I love that. It's all over the place. But as I said, just the plots and kind of where is it going? It's all sometimes a bit random, but I really don't mind that. But it doesn't go up for me to the higher, I do think Harry Potter is a great sort of children's literature and it's well crafted book. And I think that the high, as I mentioned this before, I think like the ultimate children's book is Heidi, because it's got everything. It's got the great characters, it's got an amazing plot and twist and amazing layout. Whereas I feel like Astrid Lindgren, the author of Pippi, was having a lot of fun. And it's really philosophical, but it seems kind of a bit random sometimes. But yeah, I think it's a great book, guys. I really recommend it. It was controversial in Sweden when it came out because they thought, well, kids can't behave like this. This is not a good role model book.
Sure.
But in the USA, it seemed to, when it became popular around late 50s, I think, especially when the films came out in the 60s, they started caring less. And I think it kind of fitted in neatly with the whole flower revolution, the love revolution, because that's about the time the films came out in the late 60s. And I think the film for this, Pippi Goes on Board, was in 1969. It came out. So it's really, I think she became a bit of a symbol for this, anti-conformism. And the US championed her, and even the parents, and they didn't care. One opinion is simply that set in Sweden. So they just think like, all right, so it's kind of like, this is not the USA. So the kids are probably not going to behave like this. But at home territory, Sweden, it was a very controversial book. Now it's celebrated. And I think it's a great book, guys. I'm looking forward to the third one. I've been taking it very easy. And it's a great book because it's so episodic. The chapters are short. especially in the first book, but also in the first half of Pippi Goes on Board. It seems like just random little small kind of adventures and episodes, and there's always a kind of maybe a morale, but in a strange, not very sort of kind of telling you, oh, if you do this, do that. It's kind of like, well, look, you could do that. You could just go to a circus and actually just join the circus crowd and just dance on ropes, even though there's always some kind of policeman or someone saying, oh, you can't do that, and she does it anyway. So I think it's a great role model book, and very episodic and absolutely lovely. I really enjoyed. That's Pippi Goes on Board. And guys, by the way, if you don't want to read it, the films are amazing. I think the episodes and the films, they're also filmed in Sweden in the 60s, are absolutely great. And they really depict her very well. So when I read the book, it's really, the films just come back to mind, and it's such good fun. And when she starts going, so yeah, Pippi Goes on Board is basically adventures going on board. And the next sequel will actually be her in the Pacific. So there's a lot of kind of exotic settings happening in the second and third book. So it's absolutely great.
Well, PJ, it sounds like you enjoyed your reading a little bit more than I did this month.
Well, yeah. Well, look, as I said, one thing I want to mention, Dean, I think you'd like it. It's got a very sort of unique writing style. So I think like just especially the way Pippi speaks. I always think that, oh wow, if I'd written that'll be great, because just a phrase she says, because there's something very wise about the nonsense she says. It's very nonsensical, so it's going sometimes a bit towards Alice in Wonderland, not surreal, but yeah, it's absolutely amazing. The things she come up with, they could be like little kind of philosophical phrases you could remember for yourself to cheer yourself up, or just to think outside the box. It's the ultimate kind of think outside the box children protagonist that you need, because you don't get that in Heidi. You don't get that in most children's books. It's more like the things that happen and that they deal with it in a very courageous way, but you don't really get like this kind of, well, think outside the box. I'm going to say something that's really absurd and think about the box that leaves you thinking. And my problem with Alice in Wonderland is that I really love the Alice in Wonderland books, but for me it's just absurdism, and that bores me after a while, to be honest. It bores me. Too much absurdism bores me. I do like a bit of a existential kind of purpose behind it, and I don't get that in Alice. It's just kind of, you're left with an impression with the Alice books. You're left with this impression. There, it is philosophical, but it's not at all clear what's philosophical about. So in these books, I do get some ideas about what I could do to implement for myself, about how to be more positive. It's just basically, she cannot be negative ever. So in the first book, if we're going back to the first book, in the first book, like these gangsters drop into her house because they see that she might have a lot of money. And what she does is she just wakes up and just asks them to dance a Scottish dance with her, and that she can't. She constantly, she doesn't go to bed or anything like when she wants to. She does everything over the place, and she just makes these two dance, and they really have a great time. And they're supposed to be stealing something, but she just makes them dance until they're zonked out, and then she makes pancakes, and that's a real good time. And then she actually gives them some money because she sees that they're struggling, and they're really grateful.
Okay,
that's the end of that story. So it's really these positive life lessons. So that's my little. That
sounds nice. BJ, I want to make a little addendum now that you've calmed me down with your soothing words. I ranted a little bit about Emma.
Yeah.
I don't want to give because I didn't rant about any of the other Jane Austens, so people might have the misapprehension that it was the worst. It just had the misfortune to come last, and I was just 6 in a row, and I was sick of them.
Yeah.
I don't want to make it seem like it was worse than the others. It was fine. I just couldn't do any more. But I moved on and I read next An Agatha Christie, which you can hear about on Caper Captains. But I'll just leave you with this little teaser. Some are born to sweet delight, and some are born to endless night. I read Agatha Christie's Endless Night. So again, patreon.com/booksboys,
Oh yeah,
and you get all of our bonus shows on there.
I actually read that one too. That's a great one. Can't remember the plot
Oh, you
really
know
too
that
much.
one?
Can't remember the plot too much, but I just remember really enjoying it. And that's the thing with Agatha Christie. I do love them all, but I kind of forget them very easily because they're so kind of short and quick, and they're very
I
detailed.
always end up buying the same one again because the plot on the back sounds so similar
Very
that I don't know
similar.
if I've read it or not, you know?
Awesome. Well, thanks for recommending it.
So let's take a quick second to just say hi to everyone listening. You know that you can
Hello there.
email us at booksboys@hotmail.com. And if you go to booksboys.com, you got links to all our projects, our different podcasts, our Patreon. There's a link to your site, The Holy Wholesome Life. There's links to our Instagram and various other things. So that's a nice portal for anything that we're involved with. And of course, you can email us and tell us what you're reading. And this is the end of our first year, PJ. It's episode 12. This is the end of year 1. And that means it's the end of the mystery book giveaway. So if you still want to get a mystery book, email us and tell us what you're reading, and you can get the last of the mystery book giveaway. And of course, hello to everyone listening, especially on Radio Oxton in England, as well as everyone downloading the podcast.
But I just wanted to mention our anniversary will actually be the next episode.
So next month will be the 1 year anniversary. This month is the end of
celebration.
The first year as such, you know.
Yeah.
So because after this, you know, the next year will be the actual anniversary episode.
Oh, so guys, get ready for that. Get your party hats on. Get all your favorite books stacked up, and you know, eat some hummus or something.
Now, PJ,
scrumptious.
The anniversary episode is also going to be recorded on Halloween. Maybe we'll have a talk off air, but maybe we should try to read a spooky book. Yeah,
a spooky book. Oh. And if you want to, guys, you can get a special episode. You know, just get out your credit cards. If you want a special episode where I make spooky noises for you for 2 hours. Spooky noises.
Now, PJ, I'm going to turn on the webcam real quick to show you who our co-host is this week.
And
we're joined this week in the webcam sessions by little Dolly the cat.
Good Lord.
Again, visual segments are always good for the audio listeners. I'm running out of co-hosts, though, so I've had to...
Yes, literally, your co-host was very 2D just now. She was very 2D.
I'm running out of co-hosts, so I've had to make a deal with Alfred. I said, look, Alfred, I've got no more friends to bring on these shows for these webcam. And Alfred said, look, I'll do it every month for you from now on, but you got to pay me. So guys, please sign up for the Patreon. You would not believe the amount of money that I'm paying Alfred to accompany us on our episodes now.
Good Lord, he's a cheeky little bear, isn't he?
He's a cheeky little bear, and you can see him, of course, regularly on our Instagram.
We're going to stop real quick because we have some fan mail. It's Sarah from Two Chicks, Chalk and Flicks telling us what she's read this month.
Hey everybody in Books Boys Land. This is Sarah, and I have a podcast called Two Chicks Talkin' Flicks, and I am helping out and giving you guys a review of a book that I have read. So the book that I chose to review, it's called Priest by Sierra Simone. And if you have not read this book, I'm going to forewarn you that it is very, very steamy. It's a highly spicy book. So much so that I actually have had to put it on the back burner because I felt dirty. So dirty reading this book. But it's very, very good. It's about a priest who lives in, I believe, Kansas. And he's very young. And one day this girl walks in to his church, and immediately all those feelings that he has pushed down and not thought about for years, while, being in seminary school and being a priest, are bubbling up to the surface. And she is a temptress, and it's very good. The story between the two of them is just I'm blushing just talking about it. There is a book that I read prior to this one that I thought was very steamy, and it's actually a worse book in terms of like content. It's very spicy as well. It's called Smothered by Christina Wick, and basically that book is about a plus-size girl who gets propositioned by her ex-boss to sit on his face, and that's how he gets his jollies. And that book makes it seem like it's for kindergartners. Like, Priest is just on a whole nother level. I still haven't finished it, but I recommend it. It's a very good book. If you're looking for something spicy, or if you love a good love story, and you are debating on, do you want to read something that's a little bit more taboo, or, you know, just a little different, this is a great book to read. I don't have really much more to say about it. But if you are looking for other options, something, you know, that's a little bit more tame, but is a really sweet love story, it's one that I've read actually twice. It's such a cute book. It's called Reasons I Fell for the Funny Fat Friend, by Casey May and Becca Ann. It's a very, very sweet book about a boy and a girl who get kind of put into a situation together, and it's very, very sweet. I don't want to give a lot of it away, but every title or chapter title is another reason why he fell for the funny fat friend, and it's really, really cute. So I highly recommend it. If you're looking for something that's not so spicy, that is a great book to try. So that's all I had. Thank you.
And thanks to Sarah from Two Chicks Talking Flicks.
PJ, I read one more
poses.
book. Well, I read
Right.
two more books, but I liked these two.
Okay,
So
good.
this one, do you remember I didn't like The Mill on the Floss by George Eliot?
Indeed. Yeah,
Well, I loved
I remember
Silas Marner.
vividly. Which one?
Silas Marner.
Okay, so I don't know that one.
It was written the year after The Mill on the Floss. We're still a little bit before Middlemarch here. But this is, so it's 1861 or 2, I think. And I loved this book. It's quite short, but it's, you know, it's just a nice, heartwarming, delightful story.
Nice.
So we've got this chap, Silas Marner, and again, they're all set in these little villages and towns in England, and everyone's separated from everyone else, you know. And what happens is, where he is, he gets accused of a robbery that he didn't commit by his friend, and eventually he has to leave. And you know, they refer to their village as their country, you know, because it's I left the country and never went back. And he goes to this other village, and he just becomes a recluse. And he's not the brightest chap. And, you know, at one point, he doesn't even know what day it is or what year it is. He doesn't know it's Christmas or New Year's. You know, he weaves, and he's just in his little cottage weaving and selling that to the locals. He doesn't talk to anyone. He has no society. He just sits alone in his house day in, day out for something like 15 or 20 years. Okay. And he gathers up a bit of savings. And someone comes in and steals his money. So these two brothers, Godfrey and I can't even remember what the other brother's called, but he's a bit of a rake.
Dunstan.
And Dunstan, yes. And Dunstan disappears, and they don't know what's happened to him, but it does turn out he's died. But he in the process, he steals from Silas Marner, okay? And there's these funny bits. I do like Dunstan, because he says to Godfrey, look, give me your, you know, you can't pay Dad the money you owe him because you lent it to me and it's gone, and that's your fault. You should have known better. He doesn't take any responsibility for anything. And he said, but I'll tell you what I'll do. Give me your horse and I'll sell it, and then you'll have the money. And then he goes and rides the horse and kills it, And he said, well, no, you've got no horse or money, so there you go. He just doesn't care about anything, I quite like that lovable rogue character.
Awesome. This book does sound good now. Now you're selling
it's nice. This one I genuinely liked. But it is a bit sad with poor Silas. But he loses his gold because Dunstan steals it. And there is a twist at the end, but not for us. We know what's happened. The twist is when the characters realize what's happened. But then he meets a little baby Eppie. She just crawls into his house one day, and he says, well, God took my gold, but gave me a baby. There we go. I guess we're even, and that's it. And he has these really confused ideas that maybe the baby has somehow transformed, the gold has transformed into a baby.
I love that, actually. That is awesome.
But he has the baby, and because I guess this is how adoption works. He just says, well, finders keepers, crawled into my house, I'll just keep it.
There you go. Simple
and they find a dead woman, and obviously it turns out the baby was hers, so that's fine. The mother's dead. He keeps the baby and raises it, and it's just so wholesome. She loves him so much. They're skipping around and having a jolly old time, and she brings him out of himself, and now the neighbors like him. He's no longer the weird blow-in from another town, even though he'd been there for 20 years. Now that he's got a baby, everyone chats to him and they like him, and it's brilliant. And of course, she falls in love with a guy, Aaron, because he's the only guy in the village. So that's easy enough. You marry the only available person, and they all just have a nice time. The only darkness is that they find out Eppie is, and it's a slight spoiler, but Eppie's really Godfrey's child. So that's the slight twist. But that happens, or you realize that halfway through the book. It's not a twist at the end or anything.
Nice.
But it's just also wholesome and nice. Like there's nothing bad really happens. It's just a lovely, lovely book.
Wow, sounds sweet. Yeah, I'd love to read that one. Yeah.
Now, there is a funny bit. Well, go ahead.
No, I like that it's short as well. Because sometimes it's just. I do prefer short, concise novels. Sometimes I like a bit of rambling. So that's nice that it's a shorter one, you said, right?
It is. I actually wish it was longer because I think there was a lot more that could have been done with the
characters. That's good, you see, that's good. All right.
That is good. But there's a funny bit where towards the end he says, let's go back to my own country, which I swear must have been 2 towns away. They go on the horse after 25 years. Let's go back to my home country, and they get on the horse and travel for a couple of hours.
That's something very typical in these Victorian novels, isn't it? Like, well, I haven't seen Auntie Jane for 60 years. Oh, does she live in India? Bless her. No, she lives 2 towns away. It's a big journey. I got to pack the bags and make sure no one eats the fruitcake and stuff like that.
Yeah. I should say there's some religious themes in this. The 2 towns have different religious ideas. And Silas's town, they do trials by lot. So when they think he stole, they just draw lots, like draw straws essentially, and he loses. And they say, well, God has made it that you've lost. That's his way of telling us you were guilty. So there's no need to look at any evidence. There's no need to talk to any witnesses. We did a game of luck and God gives us the right result. So you're guilty. So that's, and in the new town, obviously it's a bit more normal in that sense. They can't believe this kind of thing. But there's some other religious differences. I think one's maybe a bit more Catholic and one's a bit more Protestant, but they get into that, but it's a very light touch. It's not like some of these books. It's not like, Charlotte Bronte's Shirley, where there's just 30 pages of it, or you get a lot in Crime and Punishment and a lot of that type of stuff. There's big religious texts. It's not like that. It's a very, very light touch.
Yeah, I believe Tolstoy's last novel, I haven't read yet, Resurrection. How it goes on about it's farming manual in Anna Karenina. Guys, yes. if you want a great farming manual, was a little bit of a story in the middle just for a change. Have a read Anna Karenina. And I think it is a similar thing with a Resurrection, except it's supposed to be a religious manual. It was a bit of a story in the middle. So it's a very big kind of thing around that time, isn't it? Like the realists and the Victorian.
Dostoevsky loved it as well. Yeah, it was a big thing. I'm going to read you this little quote because it gives you an idea of how lighthearted and funny it is. It almost a Dickensian sense. So Miss Nancy, whose thoughts were always conducted with the propriety and moderation conspicuous in her manners, remarked to herself that the Miss Guns were rather hard-featured than otherwise, and that such very low dresses as they wore might have been attributed to vanity if their shoulders had been pretty, but that being as they were, it was not reasonable to suppose that they showed their necks from a love of display, but rather from some obligation not inconsistent with sense and modesty. So she's basically saying they would be vain if they were pretty, but there's no way they're dressing like that, out of vanity, because they just don't have the looks for it.
Cool.
I always find this kind of these Victorian notions just hilarious.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. I'd love to read them.
There's a lot of tender-heartedness in it. It's a lovely one. It's a really, really lovely one. There's the one other theme that worries me is about child punishment. So they sort of say, this lady says, if the child's misbehaving, you just got to lock it in the coal shed, and then it'll not misbehave again.
But that's the same way as the Pippi Longstocking novels. You just a lot of these, strange notions. But it was, guys. This book is 106 years old. So this year, so it's been a while. Things have changed.
Yeah, and Silas is a lovable guy, and he can't do it in the end.
I see.
But I'll tell you what. The very last book I read, PJ, is a book by Sandy Barker called One Summer in Santorini. This is when you're done reading Virgil, you're done reading more Jane Austen, and you just want a nice, lighthearted beach read, something nice, a nice romance. One Summer in Santorini hit the spot. Nice. Sandy Barker did her own travels to Greece, and she wrote this. It's about a girl, Sarah, who goes on a cruise, or goes on a boat, not really a cruise. She goes on a boat trip with a bunch of other people. She's just had it out of her relationship. She wants to go do something fun. She's definitely not looking for love. She meets a silver fox called James. She says, well, that's fine. We'll not see him again. She meets a young American called Josh. It's a lot of will they, won't they? And then, of course, James shows up, and then she's got to make a choice. It's perfect. It's simple. I read it in 2 days, and it hit the spot.
Nice. Awesome.
But hold on, PJ. I think I hear the telephone ringing.
Oh, who's this?
Hey, you're through to Books Boys. You've got Dean on the line. Who's calling?
Hi, this is Sandy Barker. I'm calling from Melbourne, Australia.
Hi, Sandy. It's a good coincidence you've called in, because we were literally just talking about your book that I just read, One Summer in Santorini. So that was well timed.
Well, I have a sixth sense about these things.
How are you?
Yeah, we're good. We're we're coming into spring now, so we've got that to look forward to. But yeah, I was really excited to see on social media that you were reading my book.
I was indeed, yes. I had it on Instagram. So is this your first one?
Yes, actually, it's my first one. And, this phone call is very timely, actually, because I just finished yesterday writing I think it's my 7th book, which is actually the 5th one in this series. So Santorini is actually the start of a 5-book series, and books 4 and 5 are coming out next year. So yeah, it's my very first book with one more chapter. And I just can't believe that it was only a couple of years ago that it was published, and now here we are. I've just had my 5th book out with them, and I'm writing book 7, so it's all happening. It's all trundling along very well.
That's a very high rate. I mean, because this book's only been out a couple of years, as you say. Are you typically writing more than one per year then?
I am. When I got the publishing contract with one more chapter, I already had 3 books finished. So they took them on, they're like, we'll publish those. So that was Santorini, That Night in Paris, and A Sunset in Sydney. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of already ahead of the writing schedule. And then in 2019, I pitched to them The Christmas Swap, which was my 4th book, and that came out last year. And then mid last year, I pitched to them The Dating Game, which is the book that's just come out a few weeks ago. So I do work, so I do have a day job as well, and I only work 4 days a week at the moment, but I do tend to write pretty quickly. It's taken me, the last book that I've just finished is called A Wedding in Tuscany, so no spoilers, but there are 2 sisters in the series, Sarah, who was in One Summer in Santorini, and her sister Kat, and one of the sisters is getting married, and I started writing that book probably back in, I want to say May. And so it's about 4 months part-time writing. Yeah.
Wow. So, because you're getting through these quickly, but you're working as well. So that's very impressive.
Well, thank you. It is. People are like, how do you do it? And I fire back with, how do you have children and a career? You know, like my partner and I, we don't have children. So I know that does free up kind of a lot of time and mental space and emotional space from other writers. And, you know, I know a lot of writers who are school teachers, and I used to be a school teacher, and I know that they don't, you know, they're not 9 to 5. They don't work their 40 hours a week and call it good. They're working 60-hour weeks and they are writing books. So I never complain if I feel like it's a bit much or intense. You know, I do my 4 days. I don't bring work home, and I can fit the writing in around that. But, you know, living in Melbourne, we have the dubious honor of being the city that has been in lockdown for the longest in the entire world.
Wow.
So we've had 9 months, literally 9 months in the last 18 months of lockdown. And you're not allowed to go, you know, X amount of kilometers from your home. You're not allowed to have visitors. You're not allowed to leave the home except for these 5 reasons, like full lockdown.
Well, so you're in full lockdown still? Wow.
We are still in full lockdown. We've got another month to go. But, you know, the silver lining to that is it really does free up a lot of time for writing, because there's not much else to do. There's only so much Netflix you can watch.
This is true. This is true.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize that anywhere was still in, like, you know, full lockdown. I thought everyone was doing a kind of partial, maybe there's some restrictions. That's quite intense to still be in full lockdown.
It is. And we've kind of gone into it and come out and gone into it and come out. And so this last stint was supposed to be like 3 days, and it's been 2.5 months now, and we've got another month to go. But look, you know, I think it's really highlighted how much the writing is an escape, not just for my readers, because I write travel fiction. It's also an escape for me. When I was writing Tuscany, I went back to all my photographs of the last time I was there, and I was reading kind of my travel blogs and lots of desktop research and watching movies set in Tuscany. And it's nice and immersive for me. It's kind of my armchair travel is writing these books. So I have, as I said, it's a silver lining. And I think as well, one of the things that's really been highlighted to me in the last year and a half is how wonderful the writing community is. I mean, we're just so supportive of each other, and it's particularly when you're a romance author. I mean, we are genuinely just all cheering each other on. It's like, you go girl, you go guy. And, you know, I've had people host me on their blogs. I host authors on my blogs. We're interacting on social media all the time. So it's kind of my online happy space, you know, that I can retreat to mentally, even though we're confined to the same, you know, 6 rooms in our apartment. I think both of those have been really, really helpful in kind of keeping my wits and keeping positive about the global situation.
Good. No, it's good that, you know, you're right. One positive aspect of it is that we have time to work on projects and writing and things like that. You know, I did a tremendous amount of art during the lockdown over here, so I understand where you're coming from, you know. So I was going to display my knowledge and be impressive and say, well, I've only read One Summer in Santorini, but I'm aware that we've got one in Paris and Sydney. But you beat me to that, so now it sounds like I didn't know at all.
No, you did. You absolutely did. I know you did. I know you do your research on this podcast.
So we've got Tuscany, and what's coming next?
So the next book in the series, book 4, is called, it's set in Bali. We're just kind of finalizing the title at the moment, but it's a supporting character from That Night in Paris called Jay Lee, and she goes on sabbatical to Bali and meets a hot Scot. So it's set in both Bali and in Edinburgh. And I wrote that because in 2018, my partner and I went on sabbatical. We packed up and traveled for about 13 months and lived, you know, we moved to places and would live there. So we lived in Bali for 2 months. And it was our, you know, part of our sabbatical. And, you know, we lived in this wonderful community for digital nomads. And it really inspired this book. I wanted to send a character there. And I was just kind of thinking, which of my characters, you know, in all of the books, not just the main characters, which of my characters can I send to Bali? So I sent Jay Lee there. And so that's coming in February next year. And then in A Wedding in Tuscany, we kind of pull everybody together. So the two sisters, Kat and Sarah, and their supporting cast of characters from all the other books kind of converge on Tuscany for a wedding. But as I think I said, I'm not revealing which sister's getting married. So that I'm working on that. And then once I've kind of got those ready to go, I'm going to start on a follow-up to the Christmas Swap. So when I started writing the Christmas Swap, when did I start writing that? A year and a half ago now. I wrote it as a standalone. I didn't know it was going to have a follow-up, but there were a lot of cries when readers got their hands on it of what happens next, what's going to happen with all of these women. And it's about three best friends one lives in Melbourne, one lives in Colorado, and one lives in London. And they decide to swap Christmases for the holidays. And, I write rom-coms, so of course they all meet a love interest. And now I'm going to be writing the follow-up to that. So yeah, there's always something in the pipeline. I don't think there's any rest for wicked authors.
Yeah, it sounds like you've no intention of resting, to be honest.
Yeah, I absolutely love writing, and the aim is to become a full-time author.
Yeah.
So it's looking like, my contract, I work with Pearson, I work in adult education, which I love. I actually really love I call it my day job, inverted commas, but, it's not a grind. It's not something I hate to go to. I really love my work. And my boss, I've been very transparent with my boss. Even going down from 5 days a week to 4 days a week is about the writing. It's just freeing up every Friday to just dedicate, sit down at my desk and do writing, editing. So, I've been really frank about it, and they're like cheering me on, and publication day, yay, go you, and which is really nice. And I'm looking at probably by the end of next year, I will be able to step away from other work and just focus on writing, which is the dream. It's the dream. So of course I'm going to work my little bum off until I get to that point, and then beyond that point. So yeah, there's always something in the pipeline.
Nice. No, that's good. And it's nice to hear that we do catch up with Sarah again, because I was obviously curious about where it's going to go. Do you get people? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think, that for anyone who hasn't read Santorini yet, it does leave lots of questions at the end of the book. Were you going to ask about that? Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, do people typically tell you whether they wanted her to end up with, with Josh or James? They have an opinion on which guy she should have ended up with?
Oh, for sure. Yes, for sure. And, when I wrote that, I kind of always knew I would continue her story, and her story continues directly in A Sunset in Sydney. Like, it picks up, a few hours after the first book finishes. And when I was writing that book, I knew I wanted to write the book. I knew I wanted to kind of see out who she ended up with. But as I was writing that book, I just kept flip-flopping myself. I was like, she's with James, and I'm like, oh, she's got to end up with James because he's just so gorgeous and lovely. And she's with Josh. Oh no, she's got to end up with Josh. And I kept going back and forth, and it really wasn't. And I swear this is no lie, because I am a total pantser when it comes to my writing. I didn't know who she was going to end up with until the last 20 pages of a 400-page book. So
wow.
I have heard from readers, like, you kept me in suspense. I had no idea what was going to happen. Was she going to end up with this one, or by herself? Because that was always an option. That's always on the cards. So yeah, it's and then of course there's the whole Team Josh or Team James. Is it the young American guy Josh, or the silver fox James? And I have to say, I don't know if you know this about me, but the book is inspired by my real life love story. So my partner and I, we've just celebrated 15 years together, and I met him on a pier in Santorini right as we were about to go on a sailing trip. So I started writing the book as a love letter to him. I kind of wanted to almost document like what that was like to fall in love on a sailing trip in the Greek islands. He's an American boy. I was a girl from Sydney. He was much younger than me. Like, so there was a lot of truth in the
Okay.
first parts of the book. But I realized pretty quickly as I was writing it that it's not a travel memoir, Sandy. So, you know, you're fictionalizing this. What's going to amp up the stakes here? And I introduced the silver fox, and people have asked me, was there a silver fox in real life? There was not. There was just the cute American boy. And as I said, we've been together now 15 years. But yeah, it was really fun to write that because there's a lot of truth in it. There's, you know, I've been to all those places. I've had those travel experiences, which is for quite a lot of my books. I bring in my own travel experiences. But I had the chance to play as an author. Bringing in the silver fox and creating the love triangle was a lot of fun.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I knew that you'd done traveling, so I knew there was a realistic element to it, but I didn't realize that you'd actually met your partner and that, you know, that much of it was kind of true. So that's really, really, really good to know. But yeah, you did invent the silver fox.
Yes, totally invented him. And you know, we actually went back to Greece at our 10-year anniversary. We met up with the same skipper.
Wow.
True story. I know. He's
Duncan,
called Patrick, right? In real life. He's called Patrick, and he's a Kiwi. He's not Duncan from Queensland. But we met up with the same skipper and did another sailing trip around the Cyclades Islands with him, and had a few nights in Santorini together. Because even though Ben and I met in Santorini, got on a boat and left. So we actually hadn't spent time in Santorini together, but we did that for our 10th anniversary. And yeah, we're really, we adore Patrick, our skipper, and he did, for those who have read the book or about to read the book, he did have his girlfriend on the first trip, and they're married now and have 2 kids. And like, it's just, you know, there's a lot of truth in that. So I did borrow heavily from our floating family. A lot of those characters are inspired by real people. And it's just, you know, I've been really cheeky actually as an author, because I often will kind of beg and borrow and steal from real people that we know, and kind of, you know, traits from different people and smush them together. In the Bali book, there's a lovely supporting character who's kind of an amalgam of 2 women who we met when we lived in Bali. So it's my homage to those beautiful friends. One's lives in Amsterdam, one lives in Chicago, and they're very similar women, very smart and, you know, very loving and generous. And so I just kind of mushed them together and created this character. But I've certainly been known to do that a few times.
Mm-hmm. And was Patricia based on you know, the character that kind of doesn't really get on with anyone and ends up getting kicked out? You know, was based on a real experience?
Yeah, we did have somebody a similar situation, and I thought that was we found that it was quite a bonding exercise. Really, was that there was somebody who just didn't want to be on the trip, and you know, once that person left the trip, everybody seemed to relax, and everybody all just got along like it was. I mean, that first trip was probably one of the most magical 10 days of my life. And not only did I meet my partner, but, you know, I made lifelong friends, and it was everything. The core theme of the book, which is her kind of just reconnecting with herself, that was what that trip was like for me. And I really wanted to capture that in the book, because I myself was a little lost before I went on that trip. And I, you know, I had sworn off men. I didn't want to meet anyone. I kept telling my partner, go away. So there's a lot of truth. There's a lot of emotional truth in that. And I think of all my books, that's probably the truest emotionally for me. Okay. Like, it's most reflective of me. Whereas the others, I kind of spring from my imagination and, you know, my empathy with other people.
Okay. Well, that's good. You pulled a bit of a Chekhov's gun, because we have James at the beginning, but I'd kind of forgotten about him, and I was just rooting to see, is she going to get with Josh? And then when James reappears, you said, okay, that makes sense. There's a reason that he was in the story earlier randomly. That makes sense now, but I didn't see it coming. You know.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun, actually, because when I was on Santorini before I got on the trip, I did actually have a similar exchange with an older gentleman who was very attractive. I never saw him again, but I thought it was really fun to kind of play with that character. Yeah, I like to put my characters into situations that just explode everything and just combobulate them. It's a lot of fun.
I'm a diehard romantic, so I'm always rooting for romance in any book. Even if it's not a romance, I'm always trying to find where are we gonna, who's gonna fall in love. I need to find that somewhere. So it's nice to just read a pure romance and you're rooting all the way.
Yeah.
Look,
for sure.
I'm going to pop a link. Your website is just your name, so it's stanleybarker.com, but I'll pop a link on the show notes as well, and people can read about you, and obviously your books are on Amazon and things like that. Would you always ask every author one question? So I'll ask you before you go, if there was any book that you could have written, any historical book, any famous book, what would it have been?
Well, I know that you asked this question, so I did actually have a think about this, and this isn't, this isn't kind of like one of the classics or anything, but I absolutely love Diana Gabaldon's Outlander series. And I mean, I know that the TV show is known for its kind of sexy love interests and steamy romance, but there's such beautifully written books, like the history and the research she does. Her prose is unbelievable, and this epic love story that transcends 9 books and 2 centuries, and I mean, she's just unbelievable, and she's such a world builder. So I would say her. In my entire writing career, if I ever wrote a 10th as good as she does, I will be happy. So yeah, Diana Gabaldon's Outlander, starting with the first one.
I've never read them, but someone did actually recommend them to me. Must have only been 2 weeks ago, actually. Someone was recommending them to me. Yeah, so that's the second time I've heard of them in such a short period of time. So I have to look into them now. Unfortunately, like any avid reader, I've got about 40 books in my queue, to get to. So I'm always afraid of putting more in the queue,
I know. And I get asked by author friends, would you like to do an early read? I always say yes, every single time, because I'm like, yes, and I can read pretty quickly. I do read pretty quickly, but still I feel so guilty because I take on these new books, and then I'm looking at my Kindle and if my Kindle weighed as much as how many books are on it, I couldn't pick it up.
Well, believe it or not, I have a physical queue of books. I have a shelf, and they're in order. They're in the order that I want to read them. But it takes me a long, even at a book a week, I keep buying more. So the queue never goes down. Sitting at 40, maybe it drops to 30, 25, and then I go and buy another 20, so it never stops.
It's a curse. It's a curse. It's a blessing and a curse of the avid reader. But I feel your pain. I think if I had to look at physical representations of my TBR list, I would just cry. I would just crawl under the bed and cry, because it just feels a little daunting sometimes. So I really admire the fact that you have a bookshelf of them. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it can be daunting. I feel the pain. Well, Sandy, it was lovely hearing from you. Thank you so much for calling into the show. And as I say, we'll put a link to the website and things in the notes. And have yourself, I was going to say good evening, but it's morning for you. So have yourself a good day.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Great to talk to you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
That's thanks to Sandy. PJ, what else have you got for us?
Well, Dean, last of all, I said I haven't read that much this month, but I have been still reading the Asterix comics. So the Asterix comics, guys, I really like comics now. Dean and I have got some different, we've got our differences here.
We disagree a little bit.
He enjoys his Victoria and rants about descriptions in houses and daughters leaning on dad's knees and crying. He enjoys all that. That's his comforts, late in the night. I just, sometimes I just like to read a good old Franco-Belgian comic. Now, guys, a little bit of history here. Comics, right? Got different opinions about it, but in Belgium, just after the Second World War, there was a whole kind of boom of these artists who wanted to create. They were influenced by Disney, but they wanted to create something uniquely theirs. And now, what they created was they created these comics, the Tintin novels, the Tintin comics, excuse me, the Asterix comics, the Smurfs comics, Lucky Luke. Those are four of among the most famous comics. And now, please excuse me if I mispronounce any of the names. I read them all in French. And the thing is, that really confuses me. They seem to translate them onto very strange names in English. So,
right.
Anyway.
But Tintin then should have been Tintin, no?
Tintin, exactly. And Asterix and Obelix and all that kind of stuff. Now, guys, actually, I love them all. I really love them all. And but I'm only getting into Asterix today. What I love about Asterix and Obelix is, so there's always something kind of historical about these comics, always something educational. And this is about people living 50 years, I believe it was, might be getting this wrong, before Christ, or was it after? Around that time period. So, before. So, Caesar, all these Roman empires, they were conquering Europe, and they conquered France, except this one tiny place where where Gauls lived. So basically a tribe from former France. And these guys were unstoppable because they have a druid called Gitafix in English, although this is what I mean. He's called Panoramix in French, so it's very confusing.
Hey.
So completely different. And he gives a potion of basically omnipotence. So you're just basically completely strong. You're indestructible, and as long as you drink this, no one can beat you. So it's kind of the thing is, you can't really beat Asterix and Obelix. The only way you can beat them is by stopping them drinking them potions. And in fact, Obelix actually fell into the potion when he was a baby, so he's constantly just super strong. And what I love about these comics is that they always go to some kind of different place. I'll talk about the third comic, which was probably my favorite so far, Astrix and the Goths. So they go to which is now Germany. And there's basically always kind of a culture kind of thing going on. And it's always a story about some kind of Roman emperor. He wants to mess things up. It's really about colonialism. The whole book, and about like these French guys saying "F you" to the Roman Empire. And it was Asterix and the Goths, kind of controversial at the time. It came out in the 60s, and they were wondering, are you trying to criticize Germany and the Nazis? All right, a bit of a controversy going on there, but really, I don't like to think too much about it. It's just a great read, guys. It's really relaxing. For those of you interested in the comic format, it's got my favorite comic format. They decided to simply make comics larger. So these are very large books, really large books, instead of just something you can put in pocket. And it makes it visually a lot more attractive. Now, guys, go for it. Read these comics for the artwork, for the great story. And honestly, I would never read this in a different language. Or I mean, can't say never. But for me, it makes sense to read them in French.
Read it in French if you can, yeah.
Read in French if you can. But I'm serious, because
not if you can't, though.
I can't imagine these comics being translated into anything else, because it's actually so funny in French. But anyway, that seems very snobbish. All I'm saying, it's really great in the original language. It's really funny, and wow, I just really find this very relaxing before going to bed. And again, they're great role models. I'm really enjoying books at the moment. Great role models. Victorian fathers forcing their daughters, I don't know, like to stay indoors because it's raining outside. That's not really great role models. You know what I mean?
So, but PJ, this is comics, right? So this is like a Batman versus Superman type thing, right?
I knew you were going to mention that somewhere. Exactly. It's a Batman versus Superman kind of thing. So, guys, I think that's.
Okay.
That's.
I actually like Tintin, and I was in the Tintin store in Brussels when I was last there. Yeah, it's nice.
I thought you were a big kind of. I thought you didn't appreciate the old ninth art or whatever it is.
Well, I'm not sitting reading Tintin, but I read a few when I was younger, and I like the idea. I like the idea of Asterix and Obelix as well. I know what they look like and everything. I've seen them. I get the aesthetic. I think they're fine.
I think they're fine. Yeah. But anyway, guys, that's Dean Lewis controversy. He thinks they're fine. I'm saying they're a bit more than fine. They're very brilliant. Oh, excuse me, shouldn't be cursing.
You get nothing but the most detailed literary criticisms here. I think they're fine. That's the level of review that I'm giving.
Exactly. So, guys, read it, learn. Now, to be honest, guys, this is also just teaching history. These Franco-Belgian comics, they teach history and geography to kids, especially down the time, 40s and 50s. They're really actually educational as well. And yeah, so I really love, especially, I recommend the third one, Asterix and the Goths, but all of them are brilliant.
Awesome. We're going to take a 90-second break to play an ad from two great podcasts, and we'll be back with our recommendations.
Hello, my name is Brucker Nurse, and I want to tell you about my fun horror movie podcast called Autopsy of a Horror Movie. On my show, I like to have fun dissecting out what makes a horror movie scary, what worked for it, what didn't, what types of fears does it play off of. Is it an allegory for any sort of message? I don't know, but let's find out. Also, I like to watch slashers. I'm a big slasher guy, so I'll watch a slasher and do a kill grade for it. I will cover the kills and I will tell you how I would grade it based on shock, method, style points, and a fourth category that is a reflection of the movie. Besides those, I'll have fun with special topic episodes, commentary tracks, interviews with guests, including some Shudder directors, so I just like to have a fun time over here. If any of this sounds interesting to you or you just want to come check me out, please head over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere they listen to podcasts and search for Autopsy of a Horror Movie. Also be sure to find me on Instagram at Brucker Horror, where you get fun updates and some cool little posts that I do. Thanks for listening, and I hope that you get to enjoy the show, and I'll see you on Instagram. Bye.
Hello, listeners. This is Bob from Bob's Short Story Hour, a podcast that features an eclectic array of short story recitations from both classic and contemporary authors, as well as occasional interviews and discussions about both. You can learn more by visiting us at bobshortstoryhour.com or find us anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a good night.
So, PJ, shall I go first or do you want to go?
You go first.
Okay, my recommendation, I hope I haven't done this one already. My recommendation is The Secret Garden.
Oh, lovely story.
Do you know this book, right?
Yeah, I think I've only read in a bridge book when I was a kid, so I love to read the original. Mm-hmm. It's great.
I read it as a child. I read the full book. I was like 9 or 10 years old. It's the first proper novel I really remember reading. That I still remember. I still remember liking.
Yeah,
and it is a children's novel, but it's not a silly children's novel. It's worth reading.
Yeah.
And even at 10 years old, I kind of made that distinction between, I've been reading silly books. This is a good book, And there was an old film version. There's a new film version came out a year or so ago there, which I did watch. And it was all right. But basically, you've got the author, I should mention the author, Frances Hodgson Burnett. And this is 1911. Okay, so just before World War I. Now, it's been many years, since I've read this, 20, in fact. But it's a lovely book. It is good for the kids, to get it for your kids. This girl goes to, her parents, die or whatever. She goes to this relative's house, and it's like a big old mansion with 100 locked rooms, and no one's using any of the rooms because his wife's died, so he's miserable, and then it's a very English, but everyone's miserable in these English books. And she discovers a garden, and she's going for walks because there's nothing else to do. They just say, well, amuse yourself all day, go for a walk, and that's the only available activity. So she goes for walks, and she finds this walled garden, and it's lovely and it's beautiful, and it's the only place nearby that has any life or any beauty. And then she discovers a little boy in the house, and he's sick, and takes him to the garden, and he starts to get better. It's lovely. It's just a lovely book.
Awesome.
That's my recommendation.
Well, okay, that's great. I'd love to read the original book. Guys, talking about Franco-Belgian comics, I obviously have to recommend another one. So if I had to pick just one on a desert island, I'd probably pick the Lucky Luke series, probably the first one. And if you don't know, Lucky Luke is a cowboy who's basically, it's Lucky Luke and Jolly Jumper, his amazing sort of incredible kind of horse. And now the reason why I think this is possibly, the best comic ever, or one of the best comic ever, serious, but I'm going to choose the first one, is that now I rarely read about a character who's so just, what's the word, easygoing than Lucky Luke. It is just so relaxing to just dive into that person's mindset. I mean, all he does is just basically he just goes with the flow. It's just he's just sitting there in the desert, just enjoying kind of the atmosphere, just riding his horse, and it works well in film, but I think it also works really well in comics, the Western genre. So Lucky Luke is just basically a guy who's lucky on a horse, and all kinds of things happen to him. It kind of things happen to him, and kind of deals with it, but he's incredibly lucky. And it's all got the Western stereotypes. It's the Western stories, like the Western stories are maybe not so original. They're very like other Western films at the time. This was the late 40s, but totally enjoyable. And you're left with an impression of, wow, this is, it's always kind of him in the sunset at the end, riding his horse. This is kind of a great lifestyle, even though it's dangerous as well. But you just left, it's a very kind of romantic sort of depiction of cowboys and lone rangers, and just, he's alone, but he's fun with it as well. He's got his horse, Jolly Jumper. And the stories are often hilarious. And the first one, the mine, the golden, what's it called again? Sorry, La Mine d'Or, the digger. I think it's something like Digger's gold mine in English. It's just about, finding a gold mine, or like these people trying to find gold mine, and then Lucky Luke is stopping them, and they're absolutely ridiculous. These gold diggers, and these bandits that appear, and it's got a lot of stereotypes, fair enough, but it's just so comforting and relaxing and easy for the eye. So yeah, guys, that's it. That's my recommendation. Just a little side note, Morris, he got the creator, writer, and illustrator of Lucky Luke, and got a bit tired of writing the comics. And to be honest, in most of the Franco-Belgian comics, there's usually a collaboration from these two people.
Right.
So what happened was he actually started collaborating with René Goscinny, who's the writer of Asterix and Obelix, not the illustrator. So there's a cross point. They often work together. I love that. They're kind of a team. They all knew each other. They all helped each other out and support each other. And they made this child's medium comic a more adult, more serious format. Just like Disney was considered also just, what are you doing, dealing with kids. But I just like the fact that these people, they were geeky perhaps, and they thought, oh, you're not very serious. But they just turn it collectively into something higher. It did become a higher art. So I've got a lot of appreciation. That's why I love Brussels as well, Dean. I mean, you've been there several times, but I really love that this whole city actually respects that and honors these group of maybe 10 or more cartoonists.
Right. Well, that does sound quite nice.
Yeah, I really recommend it. So there you go, guys.
Okay, awesome. So that's our recommendations. Guys, it's a shorter episode this day. The Corporation for Shorter Episodes has really been kicking in for us.
Yeah.
And we've been learning. But don't forget to go to booksboys.com. And you know what else you can do? Go to your Spotify's or your Alexas, your Amazons, whatever you listen to music on, and find TheDean and PJ Burke, and we've got music on there, and you can listen to that if you like the kind of stuff that we play at the end of some of our episodes.
It's pretty funky.
This month it's my turn, so we're going to take us out with a song I did that you won't be able to find online. It's called "Since You Left," and that I did with my friend Craig from my old work. But guys, don't forget, I want to make a big point of plugging the Patreon, because you can get this show early. You can get a Books Boys t-shirt. You can recommend books for us to read. You can get Playboys, Caper Captains, Film Fellows, Forensic Friends, everything.
All kinds of stuff.
Everything's there. Every possible alliteration show that you can think of is there. Any combination. Games Guys, it's there. Poetry Pals, it's there. Anything you want.
Totally, guys. And it's for a cheap price. We'd love to share this with you, to be honest. So just give it a try.
Because we didn't get to do a Playboys this month, I filled space by doing a 2-part special called Games Guys. It's from the vault, so these are 9 years ago. So if you want to hear me and some other people you've never heard of from an old podcast that you can't find anymore talk about PlayStation 1 video games whilst they might have been drunk, that is definitely available as well. So
that sounds like something that I would like to listen to, actually.
So there's a lot of stuff on there. There's always stuff,
Great.
and interviews from the vault where I interview a lot of rock stars and musicians and things. So lots of fun stuff. Speaking of music, I went to Bert's and I went to Bert's and I saw your dad sing this week, PJ.
Nice.
And this weekend I'm going to watch the No Explanation movie. I've got it all queued up from his new TheDean movie.
Nice. Maybe we can share a link as well, guys. It is my dad. He's just released his new film. No Explanation with his own music as well. It's pretty awesome, guys. Have a listen. And if you're ever in Belfast, check him out at Bert's Jazz Bar. It's the place to be at the weekend. He's a suave guy with suave hair. And just want to let you guys know about that.
That's it. You can go to kieranburkeonline.com. That's the site where you can find out specifically about No Explanation.
Exactly.
Guys, that's pretty much us done. So I'm going to get the DJ to spin the record since you left.
DJ.
And we'll be back in about a month.
All right, guys. See ya.
Since you left, I've torn up my heart. Don't know how I'm making you start. I can hardly breathe. Thank for crying. The soul feels like a trip I'm dying. Since you left, I'm on my own, trying to figure out why you've gone. I can hardly work for daydreaming. The soul feels like without you leaving. Since you left, I cry myself to sleep. The razor cuts, but not so deep. I can hardly focus my attention. Sorrow's just a constant distraction.
Since you left, you tore out my heart. Why did you have to go and leave me, baby? It hurts so bad, deep inside.
Since you left, my life's a mess. I miss your touch, your gentle caress. I can hardly see past all the distress.
I'll take a knife to your favorite dress, girl.
Since you left, I'm not doing so well. My heart is crushed, my soul's in hell, and I can hardly survive this pain. My only desire is to see you again. Since you
left me, baby.
Since you left.
Oh, why did you have to go and break my heart, girl?
Since you left.
Since you left. Since you left.
Since you left.
Books Boys was presented by TheDean and PJ Burke in association with Thaddeus Penguin Productions. This episode was brought to you by our sponsor,
virgilstoursofhell.gov.
If you would like to get in touch, you can email us at booksboys@hotmail.com or visit us at booksboys.com. The intro uses Driving in the 70s from the Of Soundtracks and Garage Bands EP by Trapdoor. And the outro uses Dog's Light by Bravo Max from the album of the same name. All music used is either PodSafe or used with permission. If you'd like to support the show, click on the Amazon or Audible referral links on booksboys.com or go to patreon.com/booksboys and get all of the Bufanda Boys bonus shows. Thank you kindly for listening to us. Please tell your friends, and come back next time for another episode of Books Boys. Read some books!
Yeah, I'm just so glad. I took it out on Emma. It wasn't Emma's fault. It was Persuasion's fault. It was Pride and Prejudice, the whole lot. I'm just so glad to be done with Jane Austen. Next month, Orwell.